Hi, I'm Stephen Feinberg, Executive Director of the Rhode Island Film and Television Office. Our guest tonight is an extraordinary director, producer, storyteller, and I've had the pleasure of his friendship for about 17 years now. He's also a Primetime Emmy Award winner for a little show called The Sopranos. I want to welcome Henry Bronchtein back to the table at Double Feature. This is part 2 of our interview.
Thank you for having me. I've been in the same shirt all week, and I'm ready to go.
Henry, we left off in our conversation from last week where you had just received the screenplay or the teleplay for The Sopranos for HBO, and it was written by David Chase.
Right.
Can you talk about what it was like to get The Sopranos in your hands?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first I got the phone call from Eileen Landris. Was I interested in doing this TV series? And I hadn't done much television since the early days in my career when I was an assistant director on a show called The Equalizer.
Oh.
And
because you had been doing feature films like,
yes.
like you know, you worked on Raging Bull, The Cotton Club, Weekend at Bernie's.
I'd done all feature films for the many years prior to this.
In New York primarily or all over?
Well, I traveled.
Yep.
I traveled all over, both New York and all over. So Eileen, she got this script. She wants to know if I'm going to do it. And, you know, I never say no. I say, send me the script. Let me read it. I had lined up a film that I was going to be doing in the fall, which was A Perfect Murder with
Michael Douglas.
Michael Douglas and Gwyneth Paltrow.
The Hitchcock Dial M for Murder remake called
Right.
A Perfect Murder.
Right. And so I knew I was going to work in September, and I had the summer off. And I really was planning to just take the summer off. But I said, sure, I'll read it. And then I could remember I was lying on my couch and reading the screenplay and laughing, just laughing. Like every few pages, a good hard belly laugh. And I got really excited, and I decided I wanted to do it. It was different.
This is the pilot of The Sopranos, filmed in New Jersey primarily?
We filmed primarily in New Jersey. We may have filmed the entire pilot completely in New Jersey, actually.
Yeah.
It filmed, actually, the Soprano house was about, I said Soprano. Soprano's house was about 10 minutes from my house.
Oh.
So it was very convenient that way. And we filmed in Kearney, New Jersey, in Elizabeth, New Jersey, you know, all over the metropolitan area of New Jersey.
So you said, I want to do this.
I did the pilot as first assistant director.
Okay.
You know, that involved working. First AD works very directly with the director, and David Chase directed the pilot. So
Yeah.
we had a good working relationship on that. A lot of my friends and neighbors would say, well, you're doing a TV show? I mean, I hadn't done a TV show. And people are snobby about this stuff, you know, and more so, I think, then than now.
Right.
Television has changed so much.
Sopranos was one of the game
Sopranos
changers.
really changed everything.
Right.
I think. It was a complete... But like I said, I liked it, and I kept saying to people, I don't know, I mean, this is going to be good, I think. I think you're going to like it. I said, I don't know if people in Middle America are going to like it, but people on the East Coast, New Yorkers, people who have an urban sense of, who live in cities where the mafia exists, I think, and the West Coast, people are going to like it, I think. Yeah. I mean, you don't know.
Right.
You really don't know. But again, I think I said to you once before that I like dark comedy. And The Sopranos is a perfect dark comedy. So real, but you bust out laughing.
Right.
And that's...
The characters come across as very real, which is the multidimensional, the humor, the warmth, the cold.
Oh, I mean, it goes from like you're scared out of your mind to you're laughing like you're busting a gut.
Right.
And in an instant, it happens in an instant. So yes, I was excited all about it, and so that's why I did it.
And the cast was relatively new, primarily, like people had underexposed people.
Well, yes, I would say Gandolfini was a known character actor. He'd done Get Shorty. He'd done
Right.
other movies. you know,
But he
was
wasn't a household name for
he
sure.
was not a household name. He was a guy you'd recognize, and he was a guy that you could, a producer could hire to stand up against a big name actor, and he would not get lost in the scene.
Right.
But he was not a household name, and I think the same was true of Edie Falco. Lorraine Bracco was kind of a big name.
She was probably the biggest
Yeah.
name, right?
I think she was probably the biggest name.
And she was in Goodfellas. That was her big claim to fame, right?
Yes, she was
Yes.
in Goodfellas. Exactly, she was the wife of
Right.
Henry in Goodfellas.
Ray Liotta.
Yeah, Ray Liotta.
So that was the big, and she's the psychiatrist or psychologist.
Yeah, she's the psychiatrist.
Right,
And,
right.
But you know, we had a lot of the guys had, you know, Tony Sirico had worked in a lot of Woody Allen movies, and Michael Imperioli had been in Marty Scorsese movies. In fact, he got his foot shot by Joe Pesci, and I think it's Goodfellas, right?
You think
Maybe,
I'm
maybe
funny?
Casino. Yeah,
You
yeah,
think I'm
yeah,
funny?
yeah.
He's
And
the one who gets
He's
shot?
the one who gets shot.
Oh.
And then later he shoots a kid when he goes into the bakery in Sopranos. He's the guy who shoots the kid.
I didn't realize that.
Yes.
That's good
It's a little
insight.
homage.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. What was James Gandolfini like as you worked on The Sopranos?
Well,
Because
Jimmy, first of all, he was an actor's actor. He prepared like crazy. Had an acting coach that I've taken some acting lessons with, who prepped him, to help him break down scripts, you know, because he was constantly working. So just the prep time of it. But he always came in. He knew his lines. He knew he had questions for David all the time about the acting. He was very intense as an actor.
Yeah.
A lovely guy, as a human being, just a sweetheart, not really a mean bone in his body that I ever saw.
Not egotistical.
Yeah, and so you know he was a man you had to love.
Yeah.
Couldn't help but love him.
And as the show progressed over the seasons, you also progressed as a person who started out as the first assistant director.
Yeah.
And then can you talk about the evolution of how you became the production manager?
Oh, they offered me the series, and I think I said I kind of wanted to direct, and television was an avenue in which I felt you could become a director. So I came on as a production manager with an associate producer credit in the first year.
Now let me ask you something. Assistant director has one job, which is basically
Run the set, help the schedule, help the director get through the day on the set.
Now let's talk about jumping into the production management position.
It's a different thing.
It's a different thing. Did you have a lot of a learning curve going from?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I would say I had to learn. I had to learn to pay attention to the money. I had to learn to handle people in a different way. You know, I made every mistake possible,
Yeah.
like everybody does.
Did you have a mentor?
Paul Mazursky.
Great director.
Great director, and I did 3 movies with Paul. Enemies: A Love Story, which I think is a brilliant and underrated movie.
Yeah.
Paul was always very positive with me about pursuing directing, always positive about, you know, he was a you have to live life, you have to take risks, you know, you have to try kind of person, and interested in my career and always trying to push me forward. And I think he motivated me to try to pursue that directing, which I decided to do through Sopranos.
Yeah.
I don't think I had mentors other than that.
You're doing now the production management on The Sopranos. There was nobody that you could just say, hey, what are you...
No, I did it. I had my own way of doing it.
Okay.
Probably not so well.
Okay.
Basically, I did it as if I was an assistant. The way I do a budget, and even to this day when I'm breaking stuff down, is I do it from the point of view of what's it going to take to actually make this film on the ground. Because I had worked at that point as an assistant director over 20 years when I became a producer on Sopranos.
Yeah.
And my attitude was, how many people do we need to do the job? You know, how many days will this script take? Like, okay, we really, like the first year we did 8 episodes, 8 days an episode. And it was impossible to do that show in 8 days. And we were doing 10 and killing ourselves in hours. And then we increased it and we increased it. And it was always, how much support do I need? And I would sort of budget the people and then put the numbers to it. So like I never hit targets.
Okay.
I always said, I can't do it for that. You know, this is what it takes to do it. And I think that worked out well for me because I could always support what I was saying.
Right.
And I always felt confident that we had the manpower. Sopranos was an interesting lesson to me about how things are constantly changing because success brought change.
How so?
The more successful the show was, the bigger the show became. The more the directors wanted to do things that were big camera moves, big, cranes, big numbers of extras. The more the show became iconic, the more everyone wanted to make it, to lift it up even more.
Right.
And so it was hard to keep up with it. Really, it was really like I was running all the time. The material bar has been raised, cable and the ability of cable networks and streaming networks to not follow FCC regulations on certain language, on certain content, on the way things would happen, has liberated stories.
Yes.
And the liberation of stories has inspired more storytellers and filmmakers to become involved in the medium, and the medium has grown.
And it's more diverse.
Yes, yeah, it is. I actually think personally that we've passed the golden age now, and we've got to a place now where there's so much pressure, it's so expensive that there's now pressure to be more commercial. Sopranos was free. HBO was willing to experiment at the time it came on the air, willing to let David do what he wanted. But now, you need a star in there.
It's that corporate.
It has turned the corner.
There's been conversations too about that, and sometimes in the 1970s, before corporations took over a lot of the studios, that the filmmakers, the storytellers were allowed to do more. But then as it got more and more corporates, like you said, well, is it going to be a franchise? Is it part of the Avengers? Is it part of Marvel? Is it part of this?
Yes, listen, when I went to film school, it was French New Wave, it was Italian neo-realism.
Easy Rider. You
were inspired to do art,
right?
To be like theatrical and tell human stories. Now it's comic books. I love comic books. As a kid, I read them. When I was sick, my mother would get every comic book in the candy store for me to read. I loved them, and I still love them. But I miss the other part of it, and that's economics driving that.
I think too, as the different streaming services come about, there are more diverse stories that are there's a lot of stories that are coming on. Now, it's almost a saturation of different programming.
Yeah, we also have more access to the world's storytelling, much more access than we had back in even the 60s, but even in the 50s. I mean, now you get Netflix and you get Danish and Norwegian and Israeli stories.
Right.
And you get the best of all of that.
Yes.
You don't get everything, you get the best of
My
that.
brother is watching, I think, South Korean television, the storytelling, and detective stories, and he's loving it.
Right.
Now, because our time is going so quickly, we've talked about The Sopranos as you became a producer on the show, but you also began to really focus in on directing The Sopranos, and we're going to have to do more of that in the next episode. But I want to tease the audience, let them know that we're going to talk about one of my favorite episodes, was called Pyomai. And then you were nominated for Directors Guild.
Best Directors Guild Awards for 2 episodes. Nobody Knows Anything in the first season, and From Where to Eternity in the second season of Sopranos.
Of The Sopranos. So when we come back next week's episode, we're going to talk about Henry Bronchtein and your wonderful work as a director on The Sopranos. And we want to thank you all for joining us tonight, but come back next week when we continue our conversation with the Emmy Award winner, Henry Bronchtein.